92nd Street Y online media is made possible by a generous gift in memory of Christopher Lightfoot Walker, a longtime friend of 92Y's Unterberg Poetry Center and the Paris Review. This program, part of an ongoing collaboration between the Poetry Center and the Review, features a Writers at Work interview with Maya Angelou. It was recorded on January 11, 1988, before a live audience at New York's 92nd Street Y.
Welcome, everybody. My name is George Plimpton, the editor of the Paris Review, a distinguished literary quarterly, to which you all must subscribe before you can get out of here. This is one of a series of interviews on the craft of writing. It's been a feature of the Paris Review since its very earliest issues. 1953 was when it started. The first interview was with E.M. Forster. There have been 103, I think, interviews since the magazine started on the craft of writing. And we are tremendously privileged to have with us as part of this series Maya Angelou. You all know of her. I went to the library the other day to refresh my memory with her books. And I belong to a library which has little cards in the back. I think most libraries now have machines that do that, so you can see how often the books have been taken out. And you'll be pleased to know, Maya, that most of the books are on their third card, which means that literally dozens and dozens of people have refreshed themselves, as I did, with the pleasure of your books.
Dozens? Dozens.
I couldn't think of the next number up which made much sense.
I knew it. Tens of hundreds.
Tens of hundreds, there we are. I will add that I didn't dare look at my cards, because it wouldn't have been anything like that at all. Maya's done so many things that it's really difficult to know quite where to start. She's, of course, an author, she's a poet, she's a conductor, has been an actress, a film director, a dancer. She studied with Martha Graham. She speaks 5 languages, including Fanti, which we were going to conduct this interview in, and also Xhosa, the click language. What is Fanti, incidentally?
Fanti is good evening. Good evening, folks. Thank you. Thank you. Fanti is an Akan language from West Africa, and the Akan is to Fanti, Ashanti, Ahanta, Twi, what Latin is to English, to French and Spanish and Italian, and some Hungarian and so forth. It is the mother language. Fanti is considered by the Fanti speakers to be the most beautiful of the Akan languages. So my friends in Mexico think Mexican Spanish is the most beautiful of the Latinate languages, and rightly so, until you speak to an Italian, who would say. So
you get a chance to speak Fanti?
Yes, I spoke it yesterday. I had a daughter to call me from Lagos, and we had a chance to speak Fanti. But I get to London a lot and to West Africa. Recently, Dr. Du Bois, W.B. Du Bois's remains, he died in Ghana on the evening, in fact, of the Great March on Washington. And he was buried there. And just this past year, his remains were dug up and put into a shrine which the Ghanaian government had built, a kind of gazebo, a beautiful place. And so Miss Betty Shabazz, the widow of Malcolm X, and I, and Tom Feelings were honorary pallbearers. So we went there, and I got a chance to speak Fanti again, somehow.
There we are, Fanti. I should add that...
You notice now, when you later on, when you ask questions, remember, it takes me forever to answer. So think about that.
In that case, I should tell you that if we have time, that Maya will accept or answer questions from the audience. You have these little cards, but we've decided to dispense with those. Just get up and call out the question, whatever. My first question is, you once told me that you write lying on a made-up bed with a bottle of sherry, a dictionary, Roget's Thesaurus, yellow pads, an ashtray, a bottle of sherry, I said the bottle of sherry, and a Bible.
Yes.
What is the function of the Bible to begin with?
The language of the king, of the language of all the interpretations, the translations of the Judaic Bible and Christian Bible are musical, just wonderful. So I read the Bible to myself. I'll take any translation, any edition, and read it aloud, just to hear the language, to hear the rhythm, and remind myself how beautiful English is. To me, I do manage to mumble around in about 7 or 8 languages. English remains, of course I'm more comfortable in it, but it remains to me the most beautiful of languages. It will do anything.
Well, do you read it to get inspired to pick up your own pen?
For melody, yes, melody. For melody. Not for content, but but that too. I mean, I'm working at trying to be a Christian, and that's serious business. It's like trying to be a good Jew, a good Muslim, a good Buddhist, a good Shintoist, a good Zoroastrian, a good friend, a good lover, a good mother, a good buddy. It's serious business. It's not something you think, oh, I've got it done, like I did it all day, hot diggity, oh boy, I got it. And then, you go to, the truth is, all day long you try to do it, try to be it. And then by evening, if you're honest and have a little courage, you look at your actions through the day and say, I only blew it 86 times. Not bad. Well, that's, I'm trying to be a Christian, so looking at the Bible helps me to remind myself what I'm about. But I really read it for the melody of the language, of English.
So you can transfer that to your own prose. Do you think your prose has the ring, that particular ring that one would read in the King James Version?
Well, I wouldn't say it is exactly, but it's a little like reading Jerry Manley Hopkins. Really, no. Or reading Poe, or reading Paul Laurence Dunbar, James Weldon Johnson. I want to hear how English sounds and how Edna St. Vincent Millay heard English. And I want to hear it, so I read it aloud. It is not so that I then can imitate it. It is to remind me what a glorious language it is. And then I try to be particular and even original.
And is that why the bottle of sherry is...
Well, that helps, yes. The bottle of sherry is, in its own way, a kind of reward.
It comes at the end, not at the beginning.
Well, sometimes in the middle.
Well, when you are refreshed by the Bible and by the sherry, how do you start? What is the first thing that seems to? Is it when you're working on when you've started a day's work, is it a story that you remember? Is it a character that you remember?
No.
You pick up just where you left off the day before?
No, when I keep a hotel room in every town I've ever lived in. I rent a hotel room for a few months. And I insist that all things are taken off walls. I don't want anything in there. And I will go into the room and I feel as if all my beliefs are suspended. Nothing holds me to anything. There aren't little milkmaids moving. Nothing. Nothing. I don't want it. I don't want flowers cute, and I don't want it. Nothing. I just want to feel. And then when I start to work, I remember I will read something, maybe the Psalms, or maybe something from Mr. Dunbar, James Weldon Johnson. And I will remember how beautiful the language, how pliable it is, how it will lend itself. If you pull it, it says okay, and if you push it in, I remember that. And so I will start to write what I'm writing on. Now, Nathaniel Hawthorne says, easy reading is damned hard writing. And so I will try to pull the language into such a sharpness that it jumps off the page. It must look so easy. But it takes me forever to get it to look so easy. And of course, there are those critics, New York critics as a rule, which say of a work of mine, well, Maya Angelou has a new book out, and of course it's good, but then she's a natural writer. Those are the ones I want to grab in the throat, wrestle them to the floor, and mumble around, because it takes me forever to get it to sing. But I will work at the language, at the very thing I'm working on. Maybe an evening like this, if I had to write this evening, from my point of view, to see the rust-red, used, worn velvet seats, and the lightness where people's backs have rubbed against the center of the seat, so that that's a light orange, and then the beautiful colors of the people's faces, the white and pink white and beige white and light beige and brown and tan. I would have to look at all that, and then all those faces and the way they sat on top of those necks and that. Now, when I would end up writing after 4 hours or 5 hours in that room, might sound like it was a rat that sat on a mat, that's that, not a cat. But I would continue to play with it and pull it and say, I love you, come on, come to me, I love you. And it might take me 2 or 3 weeks to describe just what I'm seeing now.
How do you know when it's what you want?
I know when it's the best I can do. It may not be the best. Another writer might do it much better. But I know when it's the best I can do then. And I know that one of the great arts that the writer develops is the art of saying no. No, I'm finished. Bye. And leaving it alone. I will not write it into the ground. I will not write the life out of it. I won't do that.
Well, the 4 autobiographical books,
5.
they follow each other in chronological order, don't
Yes.
they? So that when you started writing I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, did you stop it knowing that you were going to move from that? It almost works line by line into the second volume,
I
doesn't
know.
it?
But I didn't know. I didn't really mean to. I thought I was going to write Caged Bird, and that would be it. And I would go back to playwriting and writing scripts for television. But autobiography is awfully seductive. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. once I really got into it, I realized that I was following a tradition established by Frederick Douglass, which is the slave narrative, speaking in the first person singular, talking about the third person plural, always saying I, meaning we. And what a responsibility. And to try to really work with that form, with the mode, the autobiographical mode, to change it, to make it bigger and richer and finer and more inclusive in the 20th century, has been a great challenge for me. So I've written 5 now. And I really hope, and I think that the works are required reading in most universities or colleges in the United States, and that my work, people read my work. The greatest compliment I receive in streets and in airports. People will walk up and say, Miss Angelou, I wrote your book last year, and I read. That is it. That the person has come into the book so seriously, so completely, that he or she, black or white, male or female, will feel that's my story. I told it. I'm making it up on the spot. That's the great compliment. I didn't expect originally that I was going to continue with the form. I thought I was going to write a little book and it would be fine and I would go on back to poetry, little music, but I love it.
Are the autobiographies going to catch up with your life? I mean,
No.
It's getting awfully close, isn't it?
No, yes, but I can't write about writing, I don't think. And I don't know what's going to happen, really.
But you say that the I is a sort of a universal we, in a sense.
The I should be the third person plural. It should be the we.
But don't these extraordinary things happen to you, which have happened to you in your life, which are very hard for perhaps the rest of us to identify
Oh
with?
my God, I've lived a very simple life. Look at this girl right here. This one, you, if you told the truth about it. You. No, I mean not the facts. Facts can obscure the truth. I don't mean the facts. I mean how it really seemed to you. You can say, oh yes, I was, and at 14 I went, and 13, and then there were the buses moved out, and so forth. Those are facts. But facts can obscure the truth, what it really felt like. Every human being has paid the earth to grow up. Most people don't grow up. It's so damn difficult. What happens is most people get older. That's the truth of it. They honor their credit cards, they find parking spaces, they marry, they have the nerve to have children. But they don't grow up. Not really. They get older. But to grow up costs the earth. The earth. It means you take responsibility for the time you take up and the space you occupy. Grow up. Serious business. And what it costs us to love and to lose, to dare and to fail, and maybe even more to succeed. What it costs in truth, not superficial. Anybody can do that. I mean in truth. That's what I write, what it really is like. And I'm just telling a very simple story.
Truth. Can one work the truth around to make it more dramatic, or must it be exactly as it happened?
Oh, I think you must work.
How much embroidery is there, for an example?
Well, the language tells you how much you can embroider without lying, you know.
But aren't you tempted to lie? I mean, novelists lie, don't they? I mean,
No,
that's their
I
great
don't know.
glory.
Well, I don't know about lying for novelists. I don't know. I look at some of the great novelists, and I think the reason they are great is that they are telling the truth. Now, the fact is, they're using some made-up names and made-up people and made-up places and made-up times, but they're telling the truth about the human being, what we are capable of, what makes us lose and laugh and weep and fall down and gnash our teeth and wring our hands and kill each other and love each other. Those are the truths of us.
Jimmy Baldwin, in fact, a lot of the writers in these series have said this, said in his interview with the Paris Review that when you're writing, you're trying to find out something you didn't know. And would you say that's so for you? Didn't know about yourself, or perhaps didn't know about
us, about human beings, yes. And then also, but when I'm writing, I am trying to find out who I am, who we are, what we're capable of, how we feel, how we lose and win and stand up and go on from darkness into darkness and that. I'm trying for that, but I'm also trying for the language. I'm trying to see how it can really sound. I really love language. I love it for what it does for us. It allows us at once to explain the pain and the glory, and the nuances and the delicacies of our existence. And then it's so amusing. It allows us to laugh. Allows us to show wit without language, despite the wonderful mime, or the mimes of this age and the 19th century. Real wit is shown in language. Real wit. One can have the great mimes and the movement and the one flower and the tear and so forth. Real wit. We need language.
But other than showing off language, aren't there other guiding principles? I mean, how about injustice, for an example? Would that be something that would...
Oh, yes, indeed. Oh, indeed. Injustice and cruelty. When I say how we are, I mean how we are. How human beings are. How cruel we are. How kind we are. How subtly brutal and overtly cowardly we are. Language helps us to say that. Without language, we have a lot of pratfalls and banana skids and banana skin skids, But language helps us to see the difference between, if there is any difference, between Howard Beach and the mass murders in Texas recently, or in Oklahoma recently. What are the differences? Who are the victims? Who are the brutes? Only language helps us, and so that's why I love it.
Is there a thread that one can see through the five autobiographies? It seems to me that the one sort of prevailing peg that everything is hung on, in a sense, is your love of your child. It seems to pull all these together.
Son.
Yes.
Yes, well, that's true. Yes. I think that that's a particular, I suppose, if I'm lucky, the particular is seen in the general, and there is, I hope, in my work, a thesis, which is we may encounter many defeats, but we must not be defeated. That sounds goody two-shoes, I know, but I believe that a diamond is a result of extreme time and pressure. Less time is crystal. Less than that, it's coal. Less time than that, it's fossilized leaves. Less than that, it's just plain dirt. I think that in all my work, in the movies I write, the lyrics I write, the poetry, the prose, the essays, I am saying that we may encounter many defeats. Maybe it's imperative that we encounter the defeats. I don't know. I just see people who haven't gone through anything. Goody two-shoes, so sweetie, darling, cutie. And I mean, you think, honey, go through something. Go through something. It is, if I have a theme in my work, it really is that we are much stronger than we appear to be, and maybe much better than we allow ourselves to be, and that human beings are more alike than we are unalike. There is no real mystique. Every human being, every Jew, every Christian, every backslider, every Muslim, every Shintoist, Zen Buddhist, atheist, agnostic, every human being wants a nice place to live, a good place for the children to go to school, healthy children, somebody to love, the courage, the unmitigated gall to accept love in return, some place to party on Saturday or Sunday night, and some place to perpetuate their God. There's no mystique. None. And if I'm right in my work, that's what my work says.
Have you been back to Stamps, Arkansas?
I went back with Bill Moyers, mean madman. About 1970, Bill Moyers and Willie Morris and I were at some affair. Judith Moyers as well. I think she was the instigator. And we may have had 2 or 3 scotches, or 7 or 8. Willie Morris was then with Harper's, right? And so there was this suggestion, why don't we all go back south? Willie Morris was from Yazoo, Mississippi, had written North Toward Home and Yazoo, or was to write Yazoo, I guess. And Bill Moyers is from Marshall, Texas, which is just across, just a hop, skip, and a jump, about as far as you can throw a chitlin, you know. From Stamps. And my town is just on that side of the Arkansas border. So sometime in the middle of the night, there was this suggestion, why don't we go south? Why shouldn't Bill Moyers and Maya Angelou go to Yazoo, Mississippi to visit Willie Morris? then why wouldn't Willie Morris and Maya Angelou go to Marshall, Texas to visit Bill Moyers? I said, great. I was agreeing with both. And then they said, and then Willie Morris and Bill Moyers would come to Stamps, Arkansas. I said, no way, Jose. I'm not going to go to this little town, smaller than the exposed part of this stage, with 2 white men. I will not do it. And that never happened. Well, but then Bill Moyers called me. He was doing that series on creativity, and he called. He said, Maya, let's go to Stamps. I said, no way. And then he continued. He said, I want to talk about creativity. I said, you know, I don't want to know where it resides. I really don't, and I still don't. I think one of the problems in the West is people are too busy putting things under microscopes and so forth. This whole thing is greater than the sum of its parts. What are you going to put it under? It doesn't tell you that much about it. So I want to know that it is there. I'd like to think that I can put my hand behind my back like Tom Thumb and pull out a plum. I don't want to know all in the... Anyway, he continued, and Judith continued, and before I knew it, I found myself in Stamps, Arkansas. Stamps, Arkansas, with Bill Moyers in front of my grandmother's store. My God. And we drove out of town, and the crew was a New York crew, you know, very right, dig where I'm coming from. I mean, like, get it on and dumb and stuff. And we got about 3 miles outside of Stamps, and I said, stop the car. I refused. I said, stop and let this car behind us pull up, and I'll take that car. Bill Moyers, who is a friend and brother friend to me, we care for each other. I suddenly was taken back to being 12 years old in a southern, tiny town where my grandmother told me, sister, never be on a country road with any white boys. And I was 200 years older than Black Pepper. I said, stop the car. I did. I got out of the car. I said, you all go on. I will not. I have to be inside the town. And I knew these guys, I mean, you know, certainly Bill. But dragons, fears, the grotesqueries of childhood always must be confronted at childhood's door. Any other place is esoteric and has nothing to do with the great fear that is laid upon one as a child. So anyway, we did that, and it seems to be a very popular program, and it's the first of the creativity programs, and it's very popular, and it's always played. And so.
Did going back assuage these childhood fears? And
they are
terrors?
there.
They're still
there like griffins hanging off the sides of old and tired European buildings.
It hadn't changed, in short.
Nah, worse than if anything.
But you hadn't. 40 years before you went back to the South, really, though.
Yeah. Almost 40. Well, say 30. I mean, be good. You know.
Was that because of a fear of the griffins everywhere? I mean, Stamps being every community of the South, practically?
Well, I've never felt the need to just prove anything, you know, to sort of an outstanding audience. I don't have that. I'm always concerned about who I am to me. First, because I'm concerned about who I am to myself and God. I really am. I wouldn't go south because I didn't want to have to pull up whatever clout I have and, and sort of walk like, hey, any of that. Because that's boring. That's not real. It's not true. It doesn't tell me anything. If I had known I was so afraid, I would have gone earlier. I didn't think I was that afraid. I just thought I found the South really, unpleasant. I have moved south now. I live there.
I would have thought that writing the autobiographies, if we're to believe that you find out about yourself through doing them, that would have made it much easier to go back.
I know. Many people think that it's sort of, that it clears the air. It doesn't do that at all. Autobiography, if you all are going to write autobiography, don't expect that it's going to clear anything up. All it does is it makes it more clear to you, but it doesn't really, it doesn't alleviate anything. You simply know it better. You have names for people. So, what was that woman's name? What was it? That's all.
So then you don't keep a particular reader in mind when you sit down in that hotel room and begin to compose or to write. It's yourself.
Yeah. It's myself, and it is my reader as well, but I would be a liar, or a hypocrite, or a fool. And I'm hardly any of those. To say I don't write for the reader, I do. But for the reader who hears, who really will work at going behind what I seem to say. And so I write for myself and that reader who will pay the dues, who will go back. There's a phrase in West Africa, in Ghana, it's called deep talk. So that for instance, there's a saying which is, the trouble for the thief is not how to steal the chief's bugle, but where to blow it. Now, on the face of it, one gets an understanding of that. But when you really think about it, it takes you deeper. When you really think about it, it takes you deeper and deeper and deeper. In West Africa, they call that deep talk. I'd like to think I write deep talk. Where you read me, you should be able to say, oh, that's lovely. Gosh, that's pretty. That's nice. But years ago, I read a man named Machado de Assis, who wrote a book called Dom Casmurro, Epitaph of a Small Winner. I read it about 1950, early 50s. And he's a South American, black mother, a Spanish father, a Portuguese. He was writing in 1865, say. And I thought the book was very nice. And then I went back and read the book. I thought, I didn't realize all that was in that book. And then I read it again and again and again, and I came to the conclusion that what Machado de Assis had done for me was almost a trick. He had beckoned me onto the beach to watch a sunset, and I had watched the sunset with pleasure. And when I turned around to come back in, I found that the tide had come in over my head. That's how I decided then I would write. I would write so that the reader says, that's so nice, oh boy, that's pretty, oh, that's nice. Let me read that again. And I think because of that, Caged Bird is in the 21st printing in hardback and the 29th in paper. And all my books, of 10 books, each book is, all my books are still in print, in hardback as well as paper. And I think it's because people go back and say, let me read, did she really say that? See?
There's a part in The Caged Bird, as I remember, where your mother, you and your brother Bailey want to do a scene from The Merchant of Venice. And you don't dare do it because your mother would find out. Your grandmother would find out that Shakespeare was not only deceased but white.
And she wouldn't have minded if she'd known he was deceased. That's how I tried to pacify her. My mother knew Shakespeare, no, but my grandmother, my parental grandmother, who was raising us, when I told her I wanted to recite, it was actually Portia's speech. And Mama said to me, she said, now sister, what are you going to render? Because the phrase, it was so fetching. The phrase was, now little Mistress Marguerite will render her rendition. Mama said, sister, what are you going to render? I said, Mama, I'm going to render a piece written by William Shakespeare. My grandmother asked me, sister, now who is this very William Shakespeare? I had to tell her that he was white. I had to. It was going to come out. It was going to get out. Somebody will let it out, So I told Mama, I said, Mama, he's white, but he's dead. Thinking then, I said, he's been dead for centuries. Thinking then she'd forgive him this little idiosyncrasy. She said, no, ma'am, little mistress, you will not. No, ma'am, little mistress, you will not. So I rendered James Weldon Johnson and Paul Laurence Dunbar and County Cullen and Langston Hughes. But it meant a great deal to me in a small town in Arkansas to have Paul Laurence Dunbar and James Weldon Johnson and Shakespeare. And I loved Edgar Allan Poe. I loved Poe so much, I called him Eep to myself. Whenever I wanted to, I just Eep.
But these books were not allowed in the house? You would have to go to the school? Or
there were none of those books in the house. They were in the school. I'd bring them home from school, and my brother gave me Edgar Allan Poe because he knew I loved him. But I had a problem when I was young. From the time I was 7.5 until I was 12.5, I was a mute. I could speak, but I didn't speak for 5 years plus. And I was what is called a volunteer mute. So I had voice, but I wouldn't speak. But I read, and I memorized, and I had just masses. I don't know if one is born with photographic memory, but I think you can develop it. I just have that.
But you never spoke these volumes at all?
For 5 years.
For 5 years.
Plus. But I did have Poe and Paul Laurence Dunbar. I had them all. I just put them in. And whenever I think about it, like kids would turn on television or radio or things, I would just push it up.
Well, I have one more question, and then perhaps the audience would like to ask some things of you. What would you give a writer as the most necessary pieces of equipment, other than, of course,
Yellow pad. Ears. Ears. To hear the language. I mean, there are so many. There's no one most necessary. Courage first.
Did you ever know or feel that you could not get your work published? And would you have continued to write were it not?
I didn't, I wasn't trying to get published. I mean, that is to say, I was a playwright and a poet, and I wrote for television and that. And then I did a lot of things, and I didn't think it was going to be very easy, but I knew I was going to do something. I mean, there's a wonderful spiritual, the real reason black people exist at all today is because there's a resistance to a larger society which says you can't do it, you can't survive, and if you survive, you surely can't thrive. And if you thrive, you can't thrive with any passion or compassion or humor or style. And yet there's a saying, a song, which says, don't you let nobody turn you around, turn you around, turn you around. Don't you let nobody turn you around. Well, I've always believed that. Nobody. So, knowing that nobody could turn me around, if I didn't publish, I would design this theater. Yes. Why not? Yes. Some human being did it, and I agree with Terence. Terence said, Homo sum, humani nihil me alienum puto. I am a human being. Nothing human can be alien to me. And when you look in the encyclopedia at Terence with one R, you see beside his name, in italics, Terentius Afer. He was an African, a slave, sold to a Roman senator, freed by that senator. He became the most popular playwright in Rome. 6 of his plays in that statement have come down to us from 154 BC. This man, not born white, not born free, or with any chance of ever achieving citizenship, said, I am a human being. Nothing human can be alien to me. Well, I believed that. I ingested that, internalized that at about 13 or 12. And I believe if I set my mind to it, well, maybe I wouldn't be published, but I would write a great piece of music or do something about maybe working on becoming a real friend in South America. A real friend. Yes, I would do something wonderful to me. Now, it might be with my next door neighbor, with my gentleman friend, with my lover, but it would be wonderful as far as I could do it. So I never have been very concerned about being, the world will tell me how successful I am. I don't have to do that.
Ears, courage.
The most important of all the virtues. Because without courage, you can't practice any other virtue with consistency.
Well said.
I think so.
Well said. Audience?
Hello.
Could you please speak about your experiences with the Porgy and Bess Company, working in Europe?
Yes.
It sounds so exciting.
Yes,
Question.
thank you. The question is, would I please speak about my experiences with Porgy and Bess? I was very young. I was hired as the premier danseuse with the company. I was so phony. I was so ignorant. The truth is, I've heard that the mixture of alcohol and gasoline is volatile, but it doesn't hold a candle to youth and ignorance. I was very young and blitheringly ignorant. And so I wouldn't say I was the first dancer. I said I was la première danseuse, la prima ballerina. Anyway, I sang the role Ruby, but I sang, I'd learned to sing in church, and I'd never studied voice, but I had studied dance. And so somehow I would manage to get through, but the other singers, they were these serious singers. Some 63 singers. Among them, they had 140 degrees in music. There were so few places for black singers trained in European classics to work that the company could afford to get a person who had 1 degree from Curtis and another from Juilliard just to be in the chorus. Well, every time I'd go out, I'd sing, and somebody backstage would say, "Maya, you flatted that E." I didn't even know I was singing in the alphabet. I didn't know what I was a dancer. But I did learn a lot, and I was really loved by the singers because I was no threat to them. But I was as serious a dancer as they were singers, and I learned a lot. I increased my love of language, because in Yugoslavia, before we went to Yugoslavia, I studied Serbo-Croat in Paris, and I studied it in French, from French to Serbo-Croat. And so when we got to Yugoslavia, I translated for the company in Serbo-Croat, which was very good for me. Again, language. It tells you how human beings are more alike than we are unalike. And that's my blessing, is to speak a number of languages. And of course, the travel with Porgy and Bess helped that. Thank you. You see how long it takes me to answer one question?
In the red, yes, Scott.
When you write something, do you go back later and change what you wrote, or what you feel at the time you wrote it? Do you leave it the way it is?
Yeah. Well, I write in the morning now, and then go home about midday, 12:30, get home, shower again, because writing is very hard work, as you know, so that you really have to do a double ablution. And then I go out and shop. I'm a serious cook. So I go out and shop and pretend to be normal. I play sane. Good morning, fine, thank you, and you? Just fine. And I go home, I prepare dinner for myself, and if I have house guests, that, and then I do the candle and pretty music and that, and then after all that, the dishes are moved away, then I read what I've written in that morning. And more often than not, if I've done 9 pages, I may be able to save 2.5 or 3. That's the cruelest time, to really admit that it doesn't work, and to blue pencil it, or. But when I finish maybe 50 pages and read it, 50 acceptable pages, it's not too bad. Then I have the same editor I've had since 1967. Many times he has said to me over the years, or asked me, why would you use a semicolon instead of a... And many times over these years, it almost sounded as if I heard him laugh, but he doesn't know I'm in town. Over the years, I have said things like, I will never speak to you again, goodbye, forever, that is it, thank you very much. And I leave, and then I read the piece and think of his suggestions, and then I would send a telegram which says, okay, so you're right, so what? Don't ever mention this to me. If you do, I will never speak to you again in life. About 2 years ago, we were out I was visiting, and he and his wife were in the Hamptons. And I was at the end of a dining room table with sit-down dinner for about 14 people. I was way at that end, and I was telling someone I have sent him telegrams over the years. And from the other end of the table, he said, and I've kept every one. Brute. But it's the editing is the most important. Your editing is the most important before the editor sees it.
Gentleman with the... oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me. We can't see very well here. Whoever shook her head. Yeah, there we are.
The white hair.
The white hair.
Pretty.
There we are.
Yeah, pretty.
It was an unforgettable experience on a night flight to listen to you on tape, read to me, I'm a YH person.
Oh, thank you.
And I was transported. No
Oh,
And I
okay.
wondered why is the memory of the story deep and emotional, but I don't retain any of the tale of the plot and character. What is that thing about you, my hearing you, that is different from my reading you?
Thank you. That's wonderful. I think you might have had the same general sensation had you read Caged Bird. If I'm really on it, then if I'm really successful, then the reader comes away saying, that was great. I remember the this and I remember the that, and then 3 months later I remember only, then I don't, but it was great. It's a little, if you excuse my presumption, but it's a little like reading some of the other writers we love and have grown up with. If someone asks you now, what is exactly the story of? And you say, well, it's set in England. I know that. Yeah. Well, no, and there were 2 towns. Yeah, there was another. Excuse my presumption, but you see what I mean? You really, whether it's a Russian writer, you could talk about Kafka, talk about, if you let some time pass between yourself and Miss Toni Morrison's The Bluest Eye. If you let some time pass between yourselves and Mr. Norman Mailer, if you let time, you can say, well, but whose cousin was, no, it's gone. If you're lucky, I think, I can't claim any more than that, but an attempt to be that lucky. Yes, there's this lady here in this red, please.
I have to say that I love you.
Oh, sister. Oh, sister, thank you, thank you, thank you. Mm-hmm. Say that.
It's hard growing up. I mean, I got so much out of what you said tonight. I'm just so glad I came. I just have a small question.
Mm-hmm.
I heard you on a morning talk show a few months ago, and you were talking about a book. I think the name of it was All God's Children Have Traveling Shoes.
All God's children need.
I've been having a hard time finding
Well, thank you. Thank you. The first, for those who couldn't hear, the first 10 minutes was just pure love. Then the question was regarding All God's Children Need Traveling Shoes, which is the fifth in the autobiographical series. And it's available now in paperback. It was did well. It was on the bestseller list for a while, and it did well. It was an interesting book to write. I think that I never agreed, even as a young person, with the Thomas Wolfe title, You Can't Go Home Again. I never agreed with that. Just instinctively, I didn't. But the truth is, you can never leave home. You take it with you, it's under your fingernails, it's in the hair follicles, it's in the way you smile, it's in the ride of your hips, in the passage of your breasts. It's all there, no matter where you go. And you can take on the affectations and the postures of other places, and even learn to speak their way. But the truth is, home, between your teeth. So, and everybody's always looking for it. Jews go to Israel. Africans, Black Americans, Africans in the diaspora go to Africa. Europeans, Anglo-Saxons go to England and Ireland, and people of Germanic background go to Germany, and they really search for home. And you can never go there, you know. It's a very queer quest. And I mean, we can kid ourselves, we can tell ourselves, we can give ourselves all the, oh yes, honey, oh yes, darling, I live in Accra, oh yes, dear. Mm-hmm. Oh no, in Tel Aviv, actually, yes, in two kibbutzim. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The truth is a stubborn fact. A stubborn fact. So this book is about trying to go home. All God's children. I will be reading from it in a little while, in fact. Victor?
What are you working on now?
Well, I've just finished it. I'm nothing. Just had to tell the truth. But a couple of weeks ago, I finished a movie for ABC on teenage parenting from the young black boy's point of view. So I was hoping it would be in production the early part of January, and I might find out something tonight about it. But it's hot. It's called Come Day, Go Day, and God Send Sunday. Yes, that lady against the wall. I'll come back.
You had said one time that when you were in a voluntary mute stage, that you wouldn't allow yourself to speak. Did you feel it more that you wanted to seek humility of language then, or after your writing had touched others?
Oh, thank you. The question is, during the period when I was a mute, did I feel then that I I wanted to seek the melody of language, or was it after I had started to write? I think it was during that period, really. I thought of myself as a giant ear, really. I could go into a room and absorb all sound. And it's a terrible, it's a seductive, it's a delicious kind of madness. Maybe like all madness, I don't know. But it's always there, just behind, just out of my sight. So when I have terrible times, my mother, my son, and my dearest friends will come to me because it's just there saying, I've got this for you. You don't have to talk again. It's delicious, I promise you. You can just and take all sound in. Oh, human sound. It's incredible. Terrible, terrible, terrible.
I think one more, then.
Okay, there's a young man back there somewhere.
What are the 5 languages that you speak?
I'm sorry.
What are the 5 languages that you speak?
Well, 5. Well, I speak a number of languages. I speak French, of course. I mean, well, Spanish was really my second language, but I know more people who speak French on this coast. But I grew up in California, and so not only Spanish, but Mexican Spanish is my language. But French and Italian, Arabic, Fanti. I took a course in cinematography in Sweden, in Swedish. I mumbled through it. I did a number of languages, many more. I just mumbled through, and I think that there's no mystique, you see. I'm convinced that people who teach language oftentimes inform the student, do you realize you're about to learn another language? There's no mystique. Human beings speak. That's all. Now, to develop a respect for the syntax, the melody, the grammar, just the science of the grammar, but the sensitivity for the syntax, that's another matter. You have to really be there a while and be all in it and love in it and eat in it and cook in it and sing in it and tell jokes in it and understand them, you know. But there is no mystique. People say, I'm hungry, I'm cold, I'm glad to meet you. You frighten me. Oh, I like you. Oh, that's a pretty color. What is that? What's a mystique? What is the mystique? Why are we pretending we have forgotten? What is it about us in this particular generation of human beings? Why are we pretending we have forgotten that we love each other, that we need each other, that we are no different? What is that? What has happened? Why do we have this superficial sophistication? What is it? To what end? Who does it serve? Thank you.
Thanks for listening. 92nd Street Y Unterberg Poetry Center webcasts and access to our archive are made possible by a generous gift in memory of Christopher Lightfoot Walker, longtime friend of the Poetry Center and the Paris Review. For more information on 92nd Street Y and the Paris Review, please visit us on the web. This program is copyright 1988 by 92nd Street Y and the Paris Review.